Hello there, good morning. It is Monday, January 6th, and my name's Rob. Around here, I'm called that developer dad. And we're building applications in .NET. Last week, we spent some time with HTML and CSS and got the actual product that I am preparing to release um, uh, to a point where I can actually feel good about releasing it. And on Friday afternoon, I recorded a short demo video and submitted that to the payment processor company. And within probably a couple hours, I heard back from them saying, yes, we will approve your store. So that's fantastic. And it gives me a whole bunch of stuff that I have to do in very short order to be able to launch this thing. Excuse me. So, without further ado, we're going to go back into the admin subsystem. And I've got a couple of thoughts about how I want to do this and how I want to host it and so on. But we need to get a few things in place before I can start thinking about that idea. So, I've got a whole bunch of open editors here. And I'm going to close down all of these different strategies and the constants and the test constants. We've got a pile of unit tests, and let's start there. Actually, no, let's run our tests. Excuse me, I have one failing test. What gives? Let's see what's what. First thing we'll do is we'll build. And it's been a few weeks since I've been in this code itself. During the break I took over the winter holidays, I finished the modify subscription use cases and wrote a whole stack of unit tests, as you can see here. And I'm just going to run all of these right now. And we actually have an error here. Apply subscription change, could not locate the strategy implementation for activity cancel. That's peculiar. That's very, very peculiar. Well, let's take a look. We'll go into our managers, because that's where all of that action happens. We'll go into the internals, strategies, and we've got renew, expire, create. We don't have cancel. Well, son of a gun. Test cancel free, new user. What's going on in here? Because this one's working. And let's see here, cancel free with unknown user. This expects a validation error. So I wonder how this one passed. Let's go take a look. We'll go to the definition. We need to go to the implementation. Go to implementations. Here we go. Manage customer subscription. Builder response, get user ID for vendor. Oh, of course, unknown user. It doesn't even get to the thing. Excuse me. Account builder performance subscription action. Let's go in here. We get our working variables. We get the template. And we have to get the change strategy. So let's go in here. Get change strategy. And we haven't registered a cancel strategy yet. So let's see what's going on in here. I want to change the name of that so that it's spelled correctly. There we go. And I need to implement a cancel subscription strategy. As a class. There we go. All right. Now, I do want to look at expire. And I want to make sure that I'm being consistent. And I'm sure there's a bunch of little patterny things. Here's cancel subscription strategy. First off, it's sealed. And it inherits from ChangeStrategy base. Save that. And we got to implement the abstract class. Activity kind. Let's just hide our test panel here. And I'm going to pull this open on the other monitor here just so that I've got some of the boilerplate stuff for reference. Subscription change kinds dot activity kind cancel. Groovy. Next up, we've got some class level globals. And we have to import those namespaces. Great. And then the only public thing is apply change. Now, we need private IEnumerable of service error, validate request, and it takes in a ChangeStrategy request. We're just going to leave it throwing a not implemented. We got to bring in system.collections.generic private IEnumerable of service error. Next one is validate subscription for cancel. And it takes in a customer subscription, maybe null. Okay, so what are we doing here? Strategy to change a customer's subscription, it's going to take sort of the same template methods regardless of the kind of change that we're making. And at a very, very high level, when we apply the change, first, we have to make sure the request object exists and that its parts have all the information we need to perform the requested change, to perform any operation. Then, if there are problems with the request or the data it contains, we'll bail out now without trying to do anything else. Next, we inspect the subscription to ensure that it is in an appropriate state for us to perform the particular operation this class is designed to do. So we've got a number of ways that we can modify a subscription. We can create a new one. We can, it's been long enough that my brain has forgotten a lot of these things. So we can cancel, obviously. That's what we're working on right now. We can create a new one. We can expire. We can renew. Later, we might add some more. But for now, these are the big four. These are the four that we have to have in place right away. And these four will basically keep me from having to be tied to my phone watching for emails coming in saying such and such a person wants to sign up. So then I have to go get on my computer and create their Entra account and provision their stuff and all of the things and so on. Any other operations, those can wait until the next day. But I don't want to spend my working time manipulating customer accounts. I want to spend my working time adding new features so that I can keep my existing customers happy and attract more new customers as time goes by. So I'm automating this boring business stuff. Now, I could have one big class called a subscription changer, where when the request comes in, I look at the type and then I just call that method or whatever. But that's really brittle. And as the nature of subscription changes over time, I may have other subscriptions, add-ons. So somebody could subscribe to just the base DM's familiar and get the generators and the stuff that I have added and will be adding to it. But what if I want to eventually add a virtual tabletop or some other more advanced thing that not everybody's going to want, but some people do? Add-on subscriptions, so like they could pay an extra X dollars a month and get access to this. If I ever implement something where somebody could actually chat with the AI familiar while they build out their game world or the people that live in it, I'm going to want to charge more for that because AI tokens ain't cheap. So that may materially change the nature of how subscriptions work. And having to modify a lot of the same things for different operations is going to be a real drag. So what I've done is I've created a base class called ChangeStrategy Base. And it defines the types of things that can happen while we change a subscription. And right now it's just apply change. This could be an interface, if I'm being honest with myself. But within apply change, what we're doing is we're validating the request for being well formed. Basically, it exists and all of the parts are there and all of the parts have data in them. And they have the kind of data that we expect. Dates are dates, strings are strings, numbers are numbers, that kind of thing. Then we need to make sure that the subscription that we're modifying can be canceled, or that we can create a new subscription, or that we can expire it, or that we can renew it, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So for those, we use these validation requests. Now I've got a validate request over here. And you know what? I feel like validate request is probably the same from one implementation of this to the next to the next. So I've got expire. I'm going to pull renew over here into this window. I'm going to grab create. So we've got that. And I'm going to pull these guys over here. And what I want to do is just very quickly split that off to the right. This one, we're going to split it to the right. Here we go. So I'm going to, here's expire. And let's line all of these up. Scooch this over. That's validate for thing. All right, so validate change request. We do that. We change validator, validate the request, add any errors. If there's anything really wrong with the request itself, we bail. Then we bring the parts out to those class level variables. Change detail errors, yeah. So this is just looking at the subscription action that's come in. And then we look at the subscription to make sure it's well formed. Oh, no. And then it's this. All right. So this gives us an opportunity for some refactoring here, because let's take a look. Oh, no, get out of here, breakpoint. I want to look at this. Validate request looks roughly the same. Validate request looks roughly the same over here. You know what we're going to do? And contextually, I say roughly the same. They're doing the same things. The one difference from each validate request to the next is the method that's being invoked for the particular action. So, where's my base class? First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to close all of these extra column editors, because that's going to make me crazy. And yes, I'm working on my other machine here. I'm going to grab these guys, and I'm going to add them to here. Now, instead of private, we're going protected. So any child class of ChangeStrategy base will have access to these class level variables, but nothing else. Excuse me. Next thing I'm going to do, protected IEnumerable service error, validate request. And it is going to accept a ChangeStrategy request, just like it says over here. And we need to bring in collections generic. And Copilot, you're very eager. You're a very, very eager junior developer. But I still have to watch you like a hawk. There we go. Now, subscription errors equals blah, 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 blah. We need to protected. Actually, you know what? Nope. IEnumerable abstract IEnumerable service error. Validate subscription for change. And it accepts a customer subscription that might be null. Subscription. Now, validate subscription for expire? No, we're going to say for change. Performs the checks to ensure that the incoming subscription is in an appropriate state for the change defined by children of this class. All right. Now, ChangeStrategy response. Let's look over here. So we've got apply change. Excuse me. ChangeStrategy response is all that stuff. Change completed equals false. Change step validation. We make a deep copy of the current sub. Okay, so this is going to be different from one thing to the next, but all of this stuff could go into a abstract method. So shrink this. Protected abstract Customer subscription. Transform subscription. And this guy is going to need all of those things. That becomes one of those. No. Duh. There we go. So we also apparently need system.link. Boop. There we go. Cool. All right. Before we go much further, I am actually going to comment this change out. Save. All right, so let's make sure the validate request is good. Now we've got a number of compiler errors that we've introduced here. And this becomes validate subscription for change. And I'm just going to throw. All right. We can get rid of this validate request. Now up here, I'm not going to monkey with this all that much. However, I do need to re-implement my abstract class. These guys can go away. Okay, so there's validate subscription for change, apply change. We're good here. All right. Let's bring these guys back over and we'll fix these up. So we're going to rename this symbol. First thing we're going to do is go protected override. Rename symbol to validate subscription for change. What are you complaining about? Let's take another look at this. Copy the name of that. Oh, validate current subscription for change. Duh. Okay. Now we can 86 this, but what I'm going to do is rather than just delete it, we're just going to comment it. Okay. Validate request. Boop. Okay. Save. We've got a couple of warnings because I no longer need these here. Save that. And we've still got some warnings in here, I think. Maybe. We'll see. All right. Renew subscription strategy. Validate subscription for change. This. We're going to comment you. You become protected override. Okay. we can get rid of this stuff because those are now properties on the base class. One more to go. Validate request. You are going to get commented. This becomes for change. This becomes protected override. And I got to get the correct name of the method because I can never remember this crap. There we go. Save. And we've got some compiler warnings because we're replacing those. All right. Save. Now, we've just done a pretty hefty refactor. So, I'm going to rebuild. Excuse me. Tests. I'm not doing this in Python, silly goose. I've got 20 of 21 passing on the last run. Let's run them all. And hope. Okay, good. We still have the one that is failing. It's probably failing for a different reason now. Could not locate a strategy implementation. Okay, and that's fine. So I got to come over to my strategy factory. Let's go ahead and register it now. We'll hide you. C, paste. Cancel. New. Cancel subscription strategy. Save. That is spelled wrong. I got to come over to expire subscription strategy. Okay, we're good. All right, back to the tests. Now, another point that I want to talk about before we go to the tests is in my ChangeStrategy factory, I could, in the customer builder, where we're doing this get change strategy, I could just have a switch case in here that says, you know, based on the action name that's come in, my changer is one of these things. But again, this builder is doing an awful lot of work. And I would much rather, when using strategies, or when using a strategy pattern, use a simple factory class. And this isn't a big class at all. And what it does is when we create the ChangeStrategy factory, all I do is assign a logger and then add instances of the different kinds of changers along with the name of the change to a private dictionary on this strategy factory. And then my get change strategy, all it does is it makes sure that I have a strategy for the incoming request. If I don't, I log out and throw, or rather return. As you can see, if we can get the value, we bounce it out. and the change type such and such was requested but is not yet supported if we can't get it. And that's it. That's all we do. Very simple, but it keeps things nice and tidy. So we can close that change strategy. And let's go ahead and rerun all of our tests. Very good. We're still failing. I didn't expect that to fix anything. But we see one or more errors occurred. The method or operation is not implemented. Of course it isn't, because we're explicitly throwing, get me out of here, blow this up. Now, before I go much further, or before I start fixing this error, there's another thing I want to do. And I'm going to close the customer builder, close the account manager. I want to come back into ChangeStrategy base. And what I want to do is this. We're going to untoggle that block comment, all right? Now, let's bring these guys back in. I'll just do them one at a time. So create subscription strategy. No longer valid because I just brought that abstract method in. So apply change, all right. I can get rid of this because my tests passed where I migrated the request validation over to where it was. In fact, I'm going to make that change on the other two as well. I'm just going to get rid of this green code. I don't like committing blocks of, or I don't like committing files where I've got huge blocks of commented out code. If I need it back later, I can hit the git time machine and deal with it then. Now, protected, override, transform subscription. And because I don't like lines that are 1 million characters long, I like to be able to see everything on screen without scrolling back and forth, because that horizontal scroll bar is, excuse me, a thing of evil. What the heck is over here? Okay, we've just got some longer constants. Yeah, I'm not that pressed about that. Okay, so we're not actually doing anything in here yet. We're okay. So let's run down here. Protected, override that, and we'll just tidy this up a little bit. And this is a formatting thing. This is personal taste. If your organization's coding standard says don't ever do this, then don't ever do it. If your senior developers or code reviewers say don't ever do this, don't ever do it. Me, I prefer this because I like seeing things nicely stacked up and as narrow as I can get them. If I were reviewing your code and I saw a big long list of parameters, we might have a short conversation about it, because that's sometimes a smell, especially if this says public instead of protected. But I'm not going to make you refactor to put things in a line like that. That's silly. Other architects and tech leads might have differing opinions, and that's okay. Hey, what's up, Mars? I am doing some refactoring on some C# code to make some admin stuff a little bit easier to reason about. protected override. Customer subscription. I'm just going to grab the method stub from one of the other strategies here rather than type all this stuff out. I use C# for almost everything, even UI. Mostly because I've been slinging code for a long time, and I have always struggled with JavaScript. Hey, C-Films, how's it going? And .NET is sort of my warm, comfy sweater. That doubles as basically an Iron Man suit. All right, so we've got all those. I've made a few changes. File. I don't have to save anything. Let's run our tests. These are our safety net. All right, great. Now, you know what? OOP can be a lot of boilerplate, but if you do it right, it can eliminate a lot of boilerplate. Now, instead of making this public abstract ChangeStrategy response, I'm gonna take a look at what's going on in the child classes. Now, this is for renew. So we validate. If it comes back with validation errors, we bail. So I am going to need down here, we can close this. Not close, but collapse it. Update quotas can stay put. But down in here, and we're going to use my domain object mapper to literally just Xerox the incoming subscription. And then we're going to return the transform subscription. But that's not good because we're not doing any stuff. C# can be object-oriented programming focused. You can also do an awful lot of things more functionally. And now I'm going to grab all of this stuff. Boop equals transform subscription. Pass all the things. And we're going to paste this. It really depends on how dogmatic you get about your object-oriented programming. There are an awful lot of things in in classic OOP that they teach at university that yes, your boilerplate complaint is absolutely valid. Modern object-oriented languages like C#, newer versions of Java, as I understand it. I'm not super familiar with Java. I can read it, but I can't code it from scratch. Yeah, I'm actually, this is the admin system, Mars, for something called the DM's Familiar. If you go to my YouTube channel, Friday afternoon session, I recorded or I live streamed the recording of a demo reel for it, and you can kind of see what it does. And I talk through the features and where I want to go with it, and so on and so forth. But it's basically just a helper for a dungeon master that that kind of eliminates some of the drudgery and kind of helps as a creative block remover type thing. Right now, it just generates non-player characters for your D&D game, like the blacksmith and the tavern keeper, and so on and so forth. All the bit player characters that your players are going to run into, and inevitably they're going to be like, "Hey, what's your name? What do they look like? Do you have any kids? Where did you grow up?" All these questions. So I wrote a generator and then feed the generated stats into an AI, and the AI writes little like more English sounding descriptions and histories and so on and so forth. Um, oh gosh, R. Yeah, okay. No wonder you're kind of allergic to object orientation because R is very much procedural slash functional. It's designed for like big data manipulation, isn't it? And like data science, all that stuff. So apply change. This is now this is now boilerplate. And I feel like I could probably get type dot name name of apply change. All right, now I can take all of this code, copy it, come over to ChangeStrategy base, get rid of abstract, paste it in here. The validate request, it's going to be the same no matter what. Apply change is now the same no matter what. Where we're different is in transform subscription, excuse me, and validate subscription for change. And those are my two protected abstract methods. So apply change. We don't even need this anymore. Let's comment that out. And before I go and apply, or before I go and make that same kind of change to the others, I want to run test renew. It passed. Passed. I'm not convinced that it's running against the latest changes. So, in order to get it to actually do the things, I'm going to need to cut that, call transform subscription, run down here. Save this. All right. It doesn't like that anymore. So just comment it out. Save. Renew. We've got that all set. Excuse me. Hide the tests. Come back to create. And we can shrink that up. Now, C-Films, you usually use, you work in PHP primarily, don't you? If I'm not mistaken. And if I'm not mistaken, PHP itself is actually a sort of hybrid between a procedural and an object-oriented language. But I think it's primarily just procedural, isn't it? Right now, I am using Microsoft OpenAI service, and the model I'm running is GPT-4o Mini. Mr. Mars, to answer your question. And I can get rid of this. So, to good-naturedly poke holes in C-Film's assertion that object-oriented code contains too much boilerplate. Okay, good. My component still works. I still have that one error down there. Just for laughs, let's see here. Cancel subscription strategy. Yeah, I do. I've been doing quite a bit of HTML, CSS. I've been doing SQL for years. Let's take a look. Where's create? Renew is also modified. So what I'm going to do is pull renew over here. I'm going to get rid of all of my commented code. Goodbye. And I had a ton of boilerplate. Yeah, I see a lot of people using MariaDB. I started off with using Azure SQL database, and then because it's what I know, and the free tier, it turns out, you get 100,000 seconds per month of uptime before you have to start paying, and to run it 24/7 for a month was going to run me anywhere between $300 and $400 a month, just for the basic lowest level form of SQL Server. So I moved over to Azure Tables for all of my storage. So talking about boilerplate, because of object orientation, I was able to, I'm just going to pull cancel over here. Here's my ChangeStrategy base. system aggregate exception, whatever. I was able to move all kinds of boilerplate that I had repeated in each of these strategy classes over to my base class. And let's just compare these guys. So prior to this refactor and leveraging inheritance, this is the current. This is what it used to be. It was boilerplate for every change class. This was largely boilerplate for every change class. This is unique to renew. Validate request was the same for every bloody class, or for every child class of ChangeStrategy. Validate for change, that was different. So that's not boilerplate. And then, of course, the transform subscription is a new non-boilerplate that lets me turn apply subscription or apply change into a base class level method. So I was able to reduce the total amount of code in this area by a fairly large amount. Now, I'm not quite ready to commit because cancel subscription strategy is still, well, it's, you know what? Let's build. Do a little clean and rebuild. And you can see all the action happening down here. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people use MariaDB. I think C-Films is using Mariah on your back end as well, aren't you? Go ahead and run my tests one more time. 17 of 17. Okay, some of them didn't run. So let's just run them all. Why aren't you running? Go. Go. And this I expect to fail. Yeah, I see a lot of people talking about Mariah or Maria or whatever, and it's a relational database system, isn't it? Like Postgres or SQL Server or MySQL or whatever. It's the same idea as those rather than, say, Mongo or Cassandra or any of the NoSQL style databases. Is that correct? I haven't explored it all that much, or at all really. Okay. Okay, cool. All right. So I'm actually going to commit all of these changes. I'm going to leave cancel not fully implemented until this afternoon. Adds ChangeStrategy implementations for renew and extend. Adds strategy implementation for cancel, but that is not complete. Refactors much of the common boilerplate code out of the individual strategies and into the base class. Let's go ahead and commit. Ah, so Oracle bought it. I'm surprised I'm surprised MySQL is still without hefty license fees then, because boy howdy, Oracle when they first bought Java. Um, there were fights and a lot of worried people about a lot of people worried about, oh God, am I going to have to pay a license fee to use it in my enterprise and so on and so forth. And then, gosh, shortly after Satya became CEO at Microsoft, when Ballmer stepped down, and then open sourced .NET and C Sharp, the whole programming world kind of went, and then .NET Core happened, and you were no longer locked into the Windows operating system. Um, Full disclosure, there's my start menu. I'm running on a Mac. If I had my screen share sized appropriately, you would see the telltale red, yellow, greens, and all of that stuff. I've got or I've spun up uh, microservice system implementations on an 8 gig of RAM M2 MacBook Air, which is what I'm using, with uh, an LLM running locally, a queuing system. I use Rabbit, and I'm getting ready to start working on something on the side that's unrelated to the DM's familiar. That kind of does quite a bit of it's sort of a service oriented slash microservices type thing. I want to kick the tires either on memgraph or Neo4j because I've never worked with a GraphDB before and I want to. And I'm going to be using RabbitMQ, probably multiple instances of whatever GraphDB MS that I pick. Um, Actually, if Postgres has graph capabilities, I might just say screw it and use Postgres. I think Redis does too. Um, but Redis is really expensive when you get to enterprise licensing. But yeah, there's some things I want to build. And first, I got to find out if the local LM application has gone multi-threaded yet, so I can run multiple LLM requests concurrently. Because I don't want to try and run this idea that I have in the cloud. It'll cost me a fortune. Um, but yeah, I want to try and build a chatbot that actually remembers and categorizes the things you talk about and stores them in like a graph DB, like a knowledge graph. And then as you chat with it, it'll be able to query that database of things that you've already talked about and grab additional context and so on and so forth to feed into uh, the actual LLM prompt itself. Just for curiosity's sake, I want to see if I can build it, and I want to see how it works because I'm really interested in exploring the nature of knowledge and how memory can be simulated to kind of enhance the behavior of a language center of a system, because that's all an LLM is it's the language center of the brain that is your computer system. And I'm sure without our human memory and all that stuff, we would behave very much like LLMs as well, where we would have to look up or we would only be able to respond based on information that we were given, and our conversations would become very, very ridiculously cumbersome. And so I want to explore and experiment on the nature of how we as developers and systems creators could differently store bits and pieces of knowledge and information in ways that um, sort of a central cognitive module would be able to query contextually and then feed the contextual information off to the actual language processor. Um, it's something I'm very curious about. And I know that there's large companies already working on this, but for me to understand it, I need to build it. And Microsoft has given us some pretty serious gifts in the terms of being able to build those things. Semantic kernel being one of them. And yeah, we've kind of fallen off topic. So what we're going to do is I'm going to end the stream for this morning. Thanks for hanging out, Mars. And C Films, it's always a pleasure to have you drop in. I am going to finish implementing the cancel subscription strategy. I'm going to get some more tests stood up around it. I've got some really neat helper classes over in my test project that help me very quickly spin up different testing scenarios and so on and so forth in my unit test project. Oh yeah, man. If you're not, you just followed me a few seconds ago. I was just about to ask. So cool. Yeah, I tend to stream twice a day, 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. And I'm building stuff. Later this week, you might see me get back into the actual application and start adding more capabilities and refining features and so on and so forth. And yeah, I really want to do game programming. I've been wanting to be a game programmer since I was a teenager, 35 years ago. Um, but I've never gotten that far. I don't think I have that kind of brain to do like 3D graphics and all of that stuff. I can write the stories, I can build the worlds, but I think the closest I'll ever be able to get is those old D&D style games from the '90s from SSI, like Eye of the Beholder and the Kryn series and Curse of the Azure Bonds and all of those things. I'd love to be able to build one of those, and I think I probably could if I took the time to do it. Oh God, yeah. Well, I'm going to be 52 this year, um, and GitHub Copilot, good lord, it's fantastic. Um, I can afford $10 a month for Copilot. If I could afford the 20 a month for, say, Cursor with Claude, because Claude, I've observed that Claude from Anthropic is considerably better at architecture and or conversing about architecture and coming up with more accurate code fragments than GPT 4.0, which is what GitHub Copilot uses. So I'm gonna break for a couple hours. I'm gonna keep working on this stuff um, during the break because I'd much rather discuss the patterns and the whys than be sitting here typing in code on a live stream. But I do quite a lot of that regardless. So I'm gonna break, and I'll be back at 1. And until then, grab some lunch. Don't forget to eat. That's a reminder for myself. Um, Drink some coffee, drink some water too. Another reminder for myself. And happy coding. Take care, everybody.